Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Grassroots podcast, a podcast where we focus on grassroots efforts and community driven change. I'm your host, Tori, and today I had a great conversation with Mel Manuel. Mel ran for Congress in District 1 last year, but they also just do a lot of amazing work in their community with their organization, Queer Northshore. We had a lot of great conversations about politics, their experience running for office, running in Louisiana. Mel gave some great advice on what people can do if they want to run for office, if they're interested. We also talked a lot about community work and how we can make changes at the local level and on the grassroots level. So, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Mel. Okay, here we go. All right, thank you, Mel, for joining me. I'm so happy to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
really happy to be here.
yeah, I want to get started by just learning a little bit more about you and your background. So, can you tell us a little more about your journey in local politics, community work, and just leading up to what actually inspired you to run for office?
Yeah, so it might be surprising for some people to hear that I was like not politically active at all, until, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Um, I was a teacher, a public school teacher, and I had a GSA club, which is Gender and Sexuality Alliance for LGBTQ students. Um, and I thought like, like this is great. Why don't we have this for adults too? So I together with my best friend we started Queer Northshore, which is now a nonprofit. At the time it was kind of, just started so we could um have a place for queer adults to, to find fellowship. Um, so yeah, we started Queer North Shore. It really started growing, and then shortly after, I think it was like 6 months after we started Queer North Shore, was the book banning movement in St. Tammany, and that largely targeted um, LGBTQ books and books with authors or characters of color as well. Um, so, that was kind of the first inkling of like, this is absolutely not okay, and we have to do something, to stop this. Um, and then there were lots of anti-LGBTQ bills being proposed in Louisiana and nationwide. There was like over 500 that year, and then over 500 the next year as well. Um, and then lastly, Katie Darling, who ran for Congress before me, just directly asked me to run. And I was like, Katie, I don't know anything about politics. And she was like, no, it's okay. Like, you know about community building. And yeah, I gave it a thought and I was like, yeah, why not? I'll do it.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, I can definitely relate to not feeling politically active at all. And then for me as well, it's like 5 or 6 years ago, around 2020, it's like, okay, there's a lot of very scary things happening. Like, I feel like I really need to be more aware of what all of this is. So that's really amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. Running for office, it's something I've thought about briefly before, and it seems like the most daunting, stressful thing ever. So I want to hear more about some of those challenges of how do you actually organize a campaign, secure funding, gain support, especially as a progressive person in Louisiana.
It is hard. It is so stressful and daunting. I mean, the biggest challenge really all comes down to money, because the more money you have, your campaign has, the more you can outsource work. So, I was working full time because I'm not independently wealthy, so I still had to work, and trying to raise money. You're basically starting like a whole business from scratch that's only going to last for however long you're campaigning. And people like Steve Scalise, who I was running against, he out fundraised me by like 200 times more than what I raised, and I I think we raised like 70 or 75,000 throughout the whole campaign, but they have millions. So, I have to do a lot of the campaign work myself, whereas Steve Scalise has people to do everything for him. Um, so yeah, I mean, that is like the big picture problem is you don't have a lot of money, so you're going to have to do a lot of stuff yourself. And then a lot of the money comes in at the end of the election, like when you're getting closer to the actual election date. And by the time you get it, like when you needed it was at the beginning.
Right.
So that's a big challenge. There's all these like things that you don't think about, like you have to file with for me, it's the FEC, all these reports that are just, it's not hard necessarily, but they're so time consuming. They take hours. It's like filing your taxes, but like
Mhm.
every few months. Um, so yeah, it is super stressful and difficult. The question was, what are the challenges? Yeah, it's just trying to fit all the work that you need to do in a very limited amount of time. And then in my case, I was running against somebody who everybody already knows who they are, and nobody
Mhm.
knew who I was. So you have to build up name recognition, and again, all of that requires money. And 75,000 or whatever, that sounds like a lot of money, but it's really nothing for a federal campaign. I
Mhm.
mean, to be competitive, you almost have to raise millions, and that's just, all of my donors were small,
Right.
normal, regular people
Mhm.
donating $20, $50. I don't have any, there's no corporations like donating to
Mhm.
me. Um, which is good, but also bad because you don't you
Yeah.
need money.
Yeah, I want to talk a little more about that funding piece. One of my questions about just being disillusioned about the political system, and I feel like that's such a serious issue. Is you have these very wealthy people or people who are willing to take money from like big corporations, like you said, and it makes it almost feel impossible for people, just like an independent person, to run for office. So, for people that feel disillusioned by the system,
Mm.
what do we say to those people, or how can we keep those people engaged? Because voting is important, right? Running for office is important. We have to try. But how do you keep people wanting to try when, it feels like you're against Goliath?
Yeah, I mean that's hard.
Hmm.
Especially when, in particular in Louisiana, our Democratic Party um needs help,
Yeah.
is struggling. Um, yeah, that disillusionment is real. I mean, if you
Hmm.
don't feel disillusioned right now, I would say that you're probably not aware of what's
Right.
happening, especially in the big picture, the whole country. I mean, um, you know, I was at the DNC convention in Chicago and I saw Kamala speak, and she was amazing, and like I was watching her campaign, and she was just, every time she spoke at every event, she nailed it. Like she was flawless. Her performance was
Hmm.
flawless in the debates. Like there's just no criticism that I could say to her, and yet she lost even the popular vote. I thought she was going to win the popular vote. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure about, electoral college, but um and yeah, that makes you feel really disillusioned.
Hmm.
And then, like in specifically in Louisiana, we had Jeff Landry roll out this new tax initiative, which basically increased taxes for us, the regular people, and lowered corporate taxes. And then like 21 of our Democratic legislators supported that. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's insane. And when you
Yeah.
have Republicans in Louisiana have the House and the Senate and the governorship, and then our Democratic legislators support that. I'm not saying all of them because they didn't, but some of
Hmm.
them. That is really disheartening, and you do feel like, what are we even doing here when even our Dems don't have our back.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say that I do think I do think you can make a difference, especially on the local level, despite the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. There are like plenty of local elections, like your parish council, school board. You can join your local DPEC, which is the parish level Democratic Party, and you can change policy and make a difference there on the local level.
Mhm.
And I'm a Democrat, but you could be an independent. You don't have to be a part of the Democratic Party. I'm not in love with the Democratic Party. I'm a Democrat
Sure.
because basically have two viable options, and one are like fascist now. So
Right.
I'm not going to be that one. But I do think we have a lot of problems with our Democratic Party. It's nothing compared to, our Democratic Party is disorganized. Sometimes they're not supporting measures that they should. They don't do enough for our minorities, but there's nothing compared to what's happening in the Republican Party right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess to answer
Um,
your question, I would say like just you can make change on your local level,
okay.
and that doesn't have to, even if the Republican Party is fascist and even if the Democratic Party is like completely not functional, you still can't make a difference.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree. For people that, you know, for people maybe they when they hear about this or they feel disillusioned, for the people that would want to run for office, what advice would you have to those people? I know it's probably a smaller group than the alternative, but what how could we help those people who are interested in running for office?
Yeah, I would say I would suggest getting involved in your community first, in whatever issues are important to you. For me, that was the library issues and LGBTQ community. For you, it might be something different, but you want to be involved in your community, doing good work, so that you know what your community's issues are, and also other people have confidence in you. And then you also, you can join your local DPEC, which is your parish level Democratic Party, or the state level Democratic Party. Um, and that will just help you kind of get connected with people who can help you form a campaign, and then run for something. I mean, my campaign was incredibly stressful, but one, it was a federal campaign, and two, I campaigned for like over a year and a half, which most people don't. Like most
Hmm.
people, especially in the smaller races, it might be 3 months. So it's not like I did it in a particularly difficult way.
Hmm.
But again, like it doesn't have to be that difficult. And for the smaller races, like most people are not raising, some people aren't raising money at all for the
Hmm.
school board, or you could raise, like if you raise like 5 or 10,000, that would be a lot for one of those
Right.
smaller races. And you could do a lot with that much money. So I would say, you know, it doesn't have to be um, like a huge scale, like the federal elections. You can do the smaller ones and still be competitive. And if you're a Democrat or an independent, a lot of times in these races, you might have 4 or 5 Republicans running and maybe just one Democrat or
Hmm.
independent. So even if you're outnumbered by Republicans, that they could split the vote, and then you have an opportunity to win, just because the field could be so crowded with Republicans and you're the only progressive, or so there are still, it is possible to run. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to like give up your life to run for office.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's a great experience, and I hope more people get involved that way.
Yeah. Did you think of running for any other like campaigns or not campaigns but positions, or was it always at the federal level like for Congress?
No, I didn't. One of the reasons that I ran in the particular race that I did was because, I mean, frankly, I knew going in that we weren't going to win because we're, the numbers just, it would be nearly impossible.
Hmm.
We'd have to have every single Democrat vote and then vote for me and
Hmm.
some independents. So I didn't, there wasn't like, there wasn't a possibility, or I wasn't like, I didn't want to go into a race that I might lose for
Hmm.
Democrats, not being a competitive candidate. But in this particular race, we were, we weren't going to win this year. But the reason that I
Got
was
it.
running was because one, we need Democrats in every election. It encourages people to come out and vote.
Mm-hmm.
Two, you get a mic, so you get to talk about issues that are important to you. And three, like it's bench building. So, we're not going to go from not being competitive against Scalise to winning overnight.
Mm-hmm.
We have to keep running people. And, we were attempting to move the needle a little bit and then keep moving it each time. That didn't happen. Unfortunately, we got about the same amount of votes as historically we do. Um, it wasn't apples to apples because it was redistricted, so the district wasn't the same as it was for Katie. But anyway, there is still a possibility that we could take Scalise's seat when he retires. Again, kind of the same way if the field is crowded with Republicans and there's one progressive candidate, that's an opportunity to win.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, to answer your question, no, I that was the only one that I thought to run for, and for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever think you would run again?
Oh God. Maybe like if I was gonna run again, I would want to run in a race that was competitive. So probably
Mm-hmm.
never in Louisiana, and not
Mm-hmm.
anytime soon,
Yeah.
because I have PTSD.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay, this is a random question, but I'm more just curious to get your opinion. I'm talking about Democrats, and there's a lot of, valid criticism against that party right now. And I'm just wondering, with your experience running as a more progressive person, you're speaking to issues that affect like the everyday worker. I think most of the criticism for maybe people in the audience that don't know, it's usually that Democrats are maybe elitist or maybe are not speaking to working people. So I just wonder, since you were someone that I feel like did speak to working people, did you ever have any experiences, even with conservative people, wanting to vote for you, even though you were not a conservative person?
Yeah, weirdly, we sent out a text campaign specifically to Republicans who, um, what was their well, anyway, we sent out some to some Republican voters, and the
Mm-hmm.
message was that we were just sharing with them the other Republicans running. So the idea was like, don't vote for Scalise. Here's some other options for you because
Mm-hmm.
he's not actually done anything for Louisiana in 30 years that he's been
Right.
in public office. And some of them responded to it. Like this was a text campaign, so they could text us back.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were like, well, who are you? What is this about? And there was a few that ended up voting for me because they were like, wow, like I've never had someone reach out to me and be this candid. So some of them voted for me, some of them voted for other Republicans, but the idea for that campaign wasn't that they would vote for me, but that they would not vote for Scalise.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like a lot of Republicans, don't like Scalise. And he's not well loved by many
Mm-hmm.
people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. And that makes me want to ask another question. Again, this one's just random, just curious your opinion. Um, Another thing that people have kind of been talking about, we're both from Louisiana, or you're from Louisiana, right? I know you live here, but yeah.
Yeah.
So we're both from Louisiana, from, the deep South. And sometimes I know people have been talking about like whether or not the South should be treated more like a swing state. Like there are a lot of progressive people here, left-leaning people here. So I wonder, since you've had experience running here as a left-leaning person, could you speak a little to that? Like should the South continue just being seen as it's only going to go red, don't even like worry about it? Or should there be maybe more strategy from Democrats in areas like this?
I considering what's happening nationally right now, I wouldn't take any state out of like the possibility to go purple or even blue because
Mhm.
we're seeing this such a far right swing. Um, I'm not saying that it will, but I'm saying that
Mhm.
the possibility is there because if um, we're going so far right now, and we're cutting all of these important programs, things like Medicaid and Medicare that many Republicans are on and use. And I think if we go too far right, people will, you know, respond by going left.
Hmm.
It's possible. It depends on if people see that as if they see Trump and Musk as responsible for what's going to happen to their pocketbooks.
Hmm.
If these the 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, if those do go through, people are going to start seeing insanely high grocery prices and, well, on everything, not just groceries.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think there's a possibility that we could see a radical shift to the left. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I wouldn't give up on any particular state right now. I do know that in Louisiana, we have among our Democrats some very conservative Democrats.
Hmm.
I mean, when I was, I ran to be like, um, not confirmed. What's the word? um, Supported by the state Democratic Party in my race, and I was the
Hmm.
only Democrat running. So it was just me, and
Yeah.
I'm on the state Democratic Party, and still 20%, so 1 out of 5 of my colleagues on the state level Democratic Party did not support me as the candidate, as the official candidate of the
Hmm.
Democratic Party, although there was no other Democrats. So
Yeah.
basically, 20% of our state level Democrats said, I would rather have Steve Scalise than a trans person.
Right.
So that tells you that the bigotry and whatever is very much alive in
Hmm.
the state level Democratic Party. At the same time, there is a progressive movement within the Democratic Party. So there was about 100 progressive people who ran to be on our state level Democratic Party. Not all of them made it, but I think something like 60 progressives won their seats.
Hmm.
So right now there is this kind of tension in the state level party between the progressives and uh, conservative Democrats. I am to say they're not Democrats because they don't
Sure.
follow the DNC's platform. It's
Hmm.
very clear that the DNC supports LGBTQ rights, supports women's right to bodily autonomy, and plenty of people in our Democratic Party don't support that either. So
Hmm.
I don't take it off the table, but as of right now, the current moment, there we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, we talked a lot about your campaign, but I want to also hear about what you're working on now, what you've been kind of working on post campaign. What has that been like? What does community work look like for you now?
Yeah, so right now I'm focusing 90% of my free time efforts on getting ready for Pride with
Hmm.
Queer Northshore. That's going to be huge this year. Last year we had like 600 people participate, and then I don't know how many attendees, but
Hmm.
I hope that it'll be at least that big this year. And the theme is going to be protest with pride because last year the mood was very like euphoric and energetic. We
Hmm.
were all really excited and it felt very kind of hopeful. And this year we're feeling like we want to take pride back to its roots, which was a
Sure.
protest, because of all the attacks on the queer community nationwide, especially with the Trump administration.
Hmm.
So right now I'm really focused on that, and I do feel like, to be honest, between my efforts in politics and my efforts as a community builder, I would say that the community building um, is the one that seems to be more impactful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that the political side won't be. I think that would be more long term, but
Yeah.
in the short term, I can definitely see the impact of the Queer North Shore is doing, the Library Alliance. Um, yeah, that's much more evident.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think one of the reasons I even wanted to start this podcast was to focus on community work and like what it looks like really locally. Because I agree, there's so many people that work in community that make such an impact. But like you said, the politics is good for long term, but the community work is definitely really awesome. I also wanted to give you an opportunity. You touched on it a little in the beginning, but if you want to give a little deeper insight into Queer North Shore, I want to give you an opportunity to just talk more about that if you have anything else you wanted to mention about it.
Sure. Yeah, it's a LGBTQ nonprofit, and the goal is to increase visibility, community, and acceptance in the North Shore and the surrounding areas. And we do that by, we have a lot of events throughout the year. I think we've already put on over 150 events in 3 years. Um, it's usually like 4 or 5 events per month, and there's
Hmm.
3,000 community members that participate in Queer North Shore. Um, it's a lot of people. We have a peer support group that meets twice a month. That one lately has been really big because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of people feeling really distressed by
Yeah.
current politics. Um, but we also do fun stuff. We have one meetup that's every month. It's called Two Beer Queers. We go to a bar, just hang out in community with each other. We do dance parties. We do holiday celebrations like Friendsgiving and Christmas.
Hmm.
It's a lot of fun, but also more importantly, I think it creates a safe space for a community that's just feels really scared right now.
Hmm.
And I know that it's what keeps me going. Like the first 2 or 3 weeks after Trump was elected, I just was not functioning as a human being, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, it was bad. I was really, really, really bad. I got super depressed. But now it's seeing my community and hanging out with those people that really gives me the strength to literally just get through another day. It feels so
Hmm.
oppressive right now. So
Hmm.
I'm so thankful that we have each other. But it is, I should emphasize that it is for the LGBTQ community, but we include allies as being a part of the LGBTQ community. So I like to say that it's for everyone who's not an asshole. So I know a lot of people don't join because they think it's only for LGBTQ
Hmm.
identifying people, but that's not the case. We welcome
Hmm.
everybody um, who accepts us. We accept them too.
That's amazing. That's so beautiful to have that space. That's really awesome. Okay, my last question before we start to close. We touched on this a little bit, but looking ahead, what do you see as some of the biggest political issues in Louisiana? And how can we kind of start to address that? Should it be education or organizing with our communities or, you know?
Yeah, I mean, God, we had so much work to do before Trump got elected, and now
Hmm.
it's like we're in a nightmare hellscape.
Right.
To be honest, like I feel like what's happening in Louisiana can't be separated from what's happening nationally. And, with Trump and Musk, they're like bulls in a china shop, just wrecking
Hmm.
everything. And then Jeff Landry being fully on board with that. Um, it's even everything. Can I just say, we have
Yeah.
to fix we need to fix everything. I mean,
Yeah.
I think even if I hope Trump is only in for 4 years. We're
Hmm.
not in an actual dictatorship right now,
Hmm.
remains to be seen. But let's say Trump is gone and we get a progressive into office. I think we're looking at a decade to fix or more to fix the
Hmm.
destruction that happened in a month. And then Louisiana, even if we got back to where we were with Edwards, I mean, we're ranked number 50 for so many
Yeah.
things. We're almost last in education, in pollution, in crime, and everything.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to even think where we would begin, but
Hmm.
you know, education's always a good place to start. I mean, we need to be competitive with our teachers' salaries. I know, like I was teaching for 15 years, and I not that long ago was making like 30,000 teaching,
Hmm.
which, is not a living wage anymore. We're never going to
Hmm.
be competitive if we're not paying our teachers living wages. So yeah, I mean that's definitely a good place to start, but honestly, we need to,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
need
I
like
appreciate that.
we need good leadership. We need a good governor. We need our Democrats
Hmm.
to follow the DNC platform. We need hell, like even if we had Republican legislators, I'd be okay with that if any of them were working towards helping actual people
Right.
and not corporations. And it seems like that's the way our country is going right now. We're
Hmm.
all about corporations. I mean, I was at a council meeting last night in Mandeville, and Kim Carver was there explaining the one of the amendments that's going to be up for vote soon.
Hmm.
And yeah, he's saying like, well, we're cutting taxes for corporations, and people act like that's good. I'm like,
Right.
no, and no, I want corporations to pay. I want them to pay so much more than they're actually paying.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going on a
Yeah.
tangent now, but we
No, you're good. You're
we
good.
just
You're
have
good. Thank you. Yeah, right.
everything we need to fix.
Right, right. Thank you for that. I want to add one more question because I left it on an intense note. So, what's something you're hopeful for? It doesn't have to be even politics, but just in general. I know you said you're working on Pride right now, but is there anything, hopeful that is happening that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, what's giving me hope these days is individuals and communities and groups protesting and resisting our going towards fascism. Um, we don't we don't need and we shouldn't rely on the Democratic Party to save us. They're not coming to
Mhm,
save us. We have to rely on ourselves and our communities, like seeing the immigrant communities in California stopping traffic on an interstate, coming out there with their flags and the music. It's really it lifts me up and gives me hope. And
mhm,
we need to all be on board there. And I think we need to unite with other communities that we, maybe traditionally don't work with, like the queer community and the immigrant community, um, the disabled community, black and brown folks, women, everyone
mhm,
who's been disenfranchised by the Trump administration. But I do see some of that happening. And it's unfortunately not getting a lot of media coverage, but when
mhm,
you're on Instagram, you can see like there are protests, there are people resisting. Um, so I think that's really good. We've seen some of these boycotts are effective, and today is the economic blackout. So I'm participating in that, not shopping at any major chains or any, only shopping locally with
mhm,
small mom and pop stores. But yeah, I think the people will be what save us if we are saved. Ultimately,
mhm.
it's going to be all of us. But there's millions and millions of people in this country that are not okay with what's going on right now, and that's what I'm living for every day.
That's amazing. Well, Mel, thank you so, so much for being here and sharing your story and answering my questions. Your passion for your community and your experience in politics is so inspiring. It's clear that you're committed to empowering people at the grassroots level, and those are the conversations I want to have here. So I really appreciate you being here. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you want to share, links to anything, anything like that that you want to share with the audience before we go?
Yeah, my last thing would be, to spread the message that we can't comply in advance, meaning, I've seen people like in our St. Tammany Democrats group ask, should I scrub everything on Facebook that I've said because I'm worried about losing my veterans benefits or
Hmm.
whatever. And the answer to that would be no, don't comply in advance. It is still legal to protest. It is legal to
Hmm.
criticize the Trump administration. So this is the time when we need to be out in full force in the streets, protesting, criticizing every stupid action that Musk takes or the Trump administration, and we need to be calling it what it is, which is fascism. Um, yeah, so don't comply in advance, defy in advance. That's the only way that we're going to stop um, heading towards a fascist authoritarian oligarchy. So
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mel.